The world is basically good. And the good stuff doesn't get reported because our shows would have to be 9 hours long. The reason the bad stuff gets reported is because it's unusual.
The common thought in law enforcement is that the media is out to get us, and I find that to be completely untrue.
The media, by definition, is really not on anybody's side.
There's no such thing as off the record. No matter who says that to you, it's always on the record.
Well, I always tell people if the sound's off on the TV, they might not know what you're saying, but they look at you and they say, oh, okay, this guy must know what he's talking about because he's sharp.
A big part of it, too, is understanding what the media wants, what the news is looking for, what reporters are looking for.
You could be a small town in the middle of nowhere and might think, well, nobody even knows we exist, but if something happens, they'll know you exist, and the whole world's going to know you exist, and you got to be prepared for that.
Hello, I'm Vivian Ecclefield, your host for this post-telecourse on news media relations. Today we'll take you behind the scenes of a television newsroom and show you how the news of the day is created. It all starts with an early morning meeting. We'll take you moment by moment through a breaking news story, show you how you can manage the media, keep officers safe, and help everyone to do their job. We'll also talk about laws and access, when and where the media has special rights, and we'll show you how being proactive with the media can actually help you in your department when the negative stories hit.
I mean, more than 30 years. And I've mostly been a streets guy. My heart is still in the streets, just like a cop who becomes a captain or a lieutenant who finds himself pushing paper more and staying indoors more when the sirens blow. I'm the same kind of person. I still want to get back out in the streets and shuck and jive and step over the fire hoses and sneak around behind fences where the SWAT teams are crouching and stuff.
You may not want to believe this, but the folks who work in the media are a lot like those who work in law enforcement.
The one thing I think that's a little different is in terms of assignments. A police officer can go out, drive around in a car for a full shift, not get a call. Pretty much the reporters, especially TV and radio, they're pretty much assigned a particular story for their particular shift, unless something else comes up, like a breaking news story. So what was interesting for me when I first got into this business was when a reporter would come to me and say, hey, we're covering this story, I would sometimes say, well, there's not much of a story here. They would have to check with their bosses to make sure that it was okay for them not to continue to cover the story. So they're usually told what story to cover, and if it's not working out to be newsworthy, then they have to check with their bosses. Unlike a patrol officer, he can ride around his whole shift and not get a call. And that was somewhat of an interesting dynamic to me in terms of they're told, the reporters are told what to cover as opposed to police officers where they just ride around.
Well, the media a lot of the times is chasing down stories in the sense that they are driving around in their news vans and they're waiting to be dispatched, much like law enforcement is waiting for a call. They're monitoring the police radios. They have supervisors that are giving them orders, telling them where to go, what to do, and they're always on the lookout for an event, much like law enforcement is always on the lookout for crimes or people needing help. And they're really in the same situation. They have to report back. They have deadlines. They're under a lot of stress. It's a very high-stress job for them because they have to get an event, compress the whole event into a small bite, and send it up to their station many times a day. It's very much like report writing. They have to condense all the information and present it to the public.
It's not really all that mysterious what they do. They've got several blocks to fill sometime during this day with news, and they have to determine what they should put in those blocks, and it's going to be different for each one. They've got stories that come in that are not breaking stories. They might be feature stories, they might be news stories, and then along comes the breaking story, which makes things really interesting because now you've got this puzzle all laid out early in the morning, and by 11 o'clock in the morning when the breaking story hits, now you've got to rearrange this puzzle.
Newsroom never stops. Now, these days, the newsroom never stops. There were days when TV stations used to go off the air at midnight and come back on at 5 in the morning. Now it never stops. Our newsroom is staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's always someone there. There's always a producer or an assignment person or an editor, always someone there. You walk into our newsroom at 3 in the morning or you walk in at 3 in the afternoon, there will be people there and the radios will be on, the scanners will be scanning.
It's very different from years ago when the news programs were 15 minutes from 11 to 11:15. Probably not too many people remember that, but that's what the news hour was really, 11 p.m. to 11:15, and that was the whole news day, other than perhaps in the evening from 7 to 7:30.
They begin, first of all, with what they know is going to happen during the day, news conferences that are scheduled or events that are scheduled, and the things that they've planned already that they want to try and cover today. And then they're always listening for that story that begins to break. And usually by the time an assignment editor comes on duty the first thing in the morning, there's already a few things that have happened overnight that need to be followed up on. There may be a SWAT that started overnight and it's still going on in the morning. And that means taking the camera people that are there, pulling them out, and replacing them with fresh people coming in during the daytime. Now that really goes on for the rest of the day. By 10 o'clock in the morning, the producers will have arrived who are going to do the 6 o'clock show and the 7 o'clock show at night. And they're coming in and looking at what they have on their table, and they're meeting with the assignment people. They have a production meeting in the morning about the shows that are going to happen in the afternoon, late afternoon, early evening. Then there's another production meeting at 3 in the afternoon where the producers from the day side begin briefing the producers from night side, where the assignment editors from day side begin talking to the swing shift, if you will, and they talk about what stories are there. And then all through this, during the meeting, somebody will burst in and say, hey, there's a tanker just rolled over on I-15, they're closing down the freeway, and then all of a sudden everything goes out the window, everything changes.
Because somebody has to go cover it. And if you take them from one story to do another, that first story does not get covered. So it's in constant flux. And, you know, in many regards, the news business is very similar to police work. You're responding to things that are happening. You're constantly adjusting. You're assessing what's the priority now, and the priority could change 30 minutes from now. So it's not as different, I think, as people in law enforcement would like to think. When I talk to recruits at the academy and we do the media relations training, one of the things I tell them is, what characteristics make a good detective? Somebody who wants to get to the bottom of things, won't take no for an answer, gets very creative and clever sometimes in how you get that information. That's the exact same things that make a good reporter.
There is such a similarity between the mentality of a person who becomes a cop and the mentality of a person who becomes a reporter. It's really scary if you sit and you try and talk about it. The work ethic is exactly the same. Deadline, be accurate, be punctual, be right.
Just like a police officer, a reporter never knows what's going to come next. It's the same attraction that a lot of people get into the public services for, because they just don't know what today is going to be like.
Here's something you may not know. Every newscast begins with a meeting, a roundtable discussion of breaking news, follow-up stories, scheduled events, and the things people are talking about. We took our cameras to the ABC affiliate in San Diego and watched. What you're about to see is not rehearsed. You won't be watching actors. You'll be watching news directors, producers, assignment editors, and reporters. This is an actual morning meeting with the people who decide every day which stories make the newscast and which don't.
All right, we have Fred.
Well, Rosin's back, and is MD working today?
She's his only rider.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
Gleason's out. We've got the arraignment for Christopher Irvin at 1:30. The Children's Hospital guy. JW's phone. Bob, you had the story idea. Melrose.
There was,
Good morning.
Morning, Sal.
so in the East Lake area, you have to pay Melrose, which provides all the landscaping and all the other stuff like that, and it keeps going up every year. Well, one small little accountant in the city of Chula Vista found a way to get it reduced, which we thought, gasoline's going up, food's going up, everything's going up. She found a way to make it go down. So I thought, just,
Hero.
kind of an interest. Yeah, I mean, taxes going down, forget about it. So I thought we'd showcase her. She works in this, probably lives there too, in this little cubicle. But it affects thousands of people who live down in the South Bay. So that's set up for this morning. We'll get that done. We'll turn it, try to get it cut, because I have the E&G thing starting at 12:30. So, so I've got to get that turned and burned and cut so I can get in there, and then after 3 I can help you write and do whatever. So that's set up in this morning.
Joan Embry is having a, Hal Clement let me know about this, a mountain lion forum up at her ranch. Could be a tie into that kid the other day in Colorado. She's gonna actually have a mountain lion present too. And just give people tips on, if you're hiking, what to look out for, what to listen for, how to react, all that stuff. So.
Will Johnny Carson be there?
Who is this for? Just anybody? Yeah.
Yeah, it's open. She's like, come out here, and when you go hiking, here's what you're supposed to do if you see one.
Just a side note here on the wire fence story of the lion cub.
Oh,
So
really?
it was human error. Somebody didn't put the cage back or the barrier between the two cages,
Right.
and the lioness, which is
Good
not
morning,
the
Sean.
cub's
Good
mom,
morning.
came after the cub.
No.
The Marines in Iraq requested Starbucks send them coffee.
Urban legend.
Okay,
Is it?
I just asked that, so, wow.
2 years old, 3 years old.
I got my guy.
The guy that started that apologized to Starbucks because it was some kid over there that said that and got into the internet and everybody believed it, and now he actually apologized to him.
All right.
The city council this morning at 10 a.m. They're going to discuss raising the parking fees at Qualcomm Stadium for non-charger events. Monster trucks, motocross, everything else that they have there, anything.
How much?
It's 15. I think they're going to take it up to 20.
Yeah, it's a pretty big hike. We had that sexual assault yesterday in PB. If you want to follow up on that, Nina scored with the victim and police out there. This morning they had a checkpoint in Linda Vista looking for 2 homicide suspects that they've kind of hit a brick
Did we
wall
get
with.
shots?
We did, and we have a fresh
We got
bow
both
shot from Mike and Elsa.
Oh, that's right. She was out there. Duh.
Did they find anything?
Yeah, it is
Did
weird.
they see anything?
When they tell you it's
DUI
that.
checkpoints.
They're going to pass out more flyers later.
Roadblock. We want 2 homicide suspects to roll into this checkpoint.
Very, very different. It's like the 40s.
Looking for
Any kind of info.
Right. Well, they've got a
Basically,
flyer with the card that they're looking for,
Yeah,
and
That'll make their cut. Okay.
Mike, the email you got, the travel warning we issued on Friday.
Yeah.
You want to go talk to the guy who claims to be a host of the radio show and give him
No, you know
I mean, we
what?
did call the tourism office and we got their side.
You got the other side of it, so,
Okay.
he's got some, I don't know about this guy that held that news conference originally, but, he's just taking shots at him, we weren't the only ones that covered that. And you got the other side, you got Jan Caldwell and everything else. Story I was thinking about, and I don't think we did it, but finding these guys at Children's Hospital, I know we've done some of that, but it's still,
I tried to do that yesterday, and I'm wondering if the city budget cutbacks have affected the answering machines, because nobody would return my calls.
is that right?
What would be the what?
Well, how they track these guys down.
Go back. Why now? Why the internet hits now? And I talked to 25 different people, and they say, well, no, talk to him. I leave messages. Enough.
Did you try the computer task force for the people?
Yes.
I can give you the cell phones to get to these guys if you want.
We did the ICE story after the first guy, and they talked about how they're using these peer-to-peer networks. So, what about the ICE? What about the technical end, the computer?
I agree.
Well, we did a story where the FBI has their own task force. Now, I don't know if they're bumping info down to the local level, but they track all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
right over here in Kearny Mesa.
And when we went to ICE, and they have a downstairs basement little office where guys hold up doing the same kind of thing.
The step we wanted to take yesterday was, why now? Why are they hitting now? These guys been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah,
They've gotten aggressive on it. So.
Yeah.
The press conference for the hospital, she says, it's amazing, these two incidents in such close proximity. And I'm like, they're not incidents. These guys have been doing it for how many years? They both were doing it at the hospital. It's just they got caught in close proximity to each other.
Yeah, another story to look at too is, downtown, it's still a mess. There's dust everywhere, all over the Hall of Justice.
All of them.
It's
Man, that's concrete dust.
yeah,
A little
and
water,
there
that
could be
thing's
like
gonna ruin your
asbestos,
car, paint job.
all kinds of stuff out there. There's people walking around all day. Could cause some sort of health issues. Who knows?
Lung Association.
We should check.
That's a good one.
You mean the condos and stuff?
Oh, the
Hotel
San Diego.
Hotel San Diego's closure.
All the dust is still out there.
That's interesting.
If you need good video, the guy from the Lung Association, his mom lives in the Meridian, and so he was up top, and he has the whole thing from up top. I mean, I'm sure we have.
I got the whole
good
thing too.
video.
Yeah, we got plenty of
Yeah.
building.
But you can hear people.
Well, Lisa's a different
With his
angle.
camera.
Do it.
On the flyers that we did this morning, did you know that they're going to be handing them out tomorrow? They're going to be
No,
walking
not
through the
tomorrow.
neighborhood.
Oh,
The
really?
detectives are. Yeah,
Okay.
and handing out the flyers. So a heads up on that if you guys wanted to do something. And they said that they used that method again 2 years ago, Tecolote Canyon shooting, and they were able to solve that case. Not sure how much it played a part in solving the case, but they don't do it very often. So I thought it was interesting that they were out there today.
Yeah, why is it taking so long?
They were going to try to do, he said maybe today and maybe tomorrow, so we can call back and find out exactly. I told him to call us to find out when they were going to do it, but they thought either later today or tomorrow.
The thing is, maybe it takes that long to get the flyers cranked out, and we get a shot of them doing those.
Right. Yeah, they did run out right away. They weren't there like till 8 o'clock, I don't think. But they ran out right away and then caused some minor traffic injuries there.
Yeah, they caused a couple accidents.
In one of the locations.
Some fender benders.
Just we're gonna have to wrap up because I got people leaving. So,
Okay.
Steve, you're gonna take the Children's Hospital guy, or Raymond.
Bob, you've got your Melrose.
Yeah.
Who wants to do the dust? That's a great story. All right.
I was gonna
Make
have.
sure you drive down there. I want to see you get angry when your car gets all.
I was gonna have Elsa do it for midday.
Huh?
Because I didn't have anything.
Elsa can do it for
She
midday
could do it
also.
for midday.
All right.
We talked to the construction guy on Sunday. He said it was his day off and he wasn't going to go on camera with us. So, thumbs up.
For today?
No, that was on Sunday when I did the story. He
Can
said
we
he
call
was-
him again for today?
I would think so, yeah.
We like earthquake.
100th anniversary.
100th anniversary.
Yeah.
Palomar Hospital is having a disaster preparedness
Should tie that.
event. Yeah.
Here's your handle.
Until 2 o'clock. We can go up there this morning.
Okay.
Anyone earthquake?
Yeah, Kim.
You want to do? Oh, Kim.
Kyle, just read off today's
This is,
so we
this is an
know.
extra one. I needed
Cavett, Tina,
on sticks and
Steve,
lift.
Well,
Richard.
Rivera instead of Cavett. See, you already messed
How
up.
about majors?
Hendricks, Elizabeth, Matt, Erica, Jenny, and you in the morning. Higgins, Jensen, Nina, Bob Lawrence, McGregor.
You're tomorrow.
I don't even know who that is.
Rankas?
All right.
Who's Rankus?
Hey, Kyle?
Kelly Cox, Red Lawrence, Sal in mornings, and then I guess it's David.
Not right now. Yeah.
Who's Rankus?
Internet tracking, right?
Hey, Kyle.
Okay.
He's
I gotta
the
get set up. You're gonna shoot
desk
an
guy.
interview with for me. We gotta do it quick. Let's do it outside.
All right. 9 o'clock.
Well, here's the background. We're working on a scam that involves a charity scam, and it involves outside activities. So I want this lady, and I don't want to do it here. I want to do something outside, nondescript background. So anything with trees or anything right here in the yard. Anywhere.
Okay, and that turnaround, the circle turnaround.
Perfect.
What time?
She's due here at 9, so if we can.
Hang that up on the bulletin board when you're done.
Thanks, man.
After the morning meeting, each photographer is assigned to a reporter, and the media is dispatched just like law enforcement. The newsroom uses two-way radios to communicate with news crews, and like the newsroom, each news vehicle is equipped with a police scanner. The news media, like law enforcement, is among the first to arrive at crime scenes. And much like law enforcement, The news media, especially television news reporters, have their own language. They talk about hitting a mark, getting a countdown, and making air. And those terms are all about making sure that their report is seamless within a newscast. They don't really affect you or your job, but the term soundbite is something you should know about.
Soundbite is what the TV stations and the radio stations use to succinctly get across a point of view that we have on a particular story. It's been traditional that you try and keep that to 20 seconds. I can tell you when I left television just 5-6 years ago, they were really wanting it in 10 seconds, and I suspect they want it even shorter now. It's very difficult to summarize what you're going to say in 20 seconds, which is about as long as I've been talking right here.
And if you do it right, your soundbite can become the story. Think of a soundbite as a headline. And that headline really can become the story. And you can turn it around by providing the right soundbite. If I were to show you a picture of Bill Clinton holding his finger up at a podium like this and said, "Give me the soundbite," you would remember, I did not have sex with that woman. If I showed you a picture of Ronald Reagan standing in front of the Berlin Wall, and I said, "Give me the soundbite," and you'd say, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall." Why would you remember that? Out of all those speeches, you may never have heard the speech. That's the power of a soundbite, and that's what can become the story.
Of course, it's not always a soundbite that becomes the story. Sometimes it's law enforcement that's the story. And again, it's important to manage the media in those cases, whether it's good news or bad.
There's always truth. I'm a big believer in the truth. There is always in the bottom line of the whole thing, there is the truth of what actually happened.
Especially in a controversial situation or in a crisis situation, you can, if you understand where they're coming from, you can predict what's going to be coming in the next day or two, and you can have an input in putting this to rest and keeping this at a shorter shelf life if it's a negative type of a story, or so that it does not blow out of proportion. One example was we had a shooting in which we lost the first hostage in LAPD history, going back to the creation of SWAT in 1968. And it was a young 19-month-old girl who was killed. One of the things the big questions waiting to be heard was it a police bullet that killed the girl, or was it her father's own bullet that killed the girl? Early on, the answer would come from, it was apparent from the coroner's office. In sitting through that autopsy with the coroner, our detectives recognized very quickly that was going to be a high-velocity bullet. And we didn't wait for the coroner to come out, because that would have been delayed 2 or 3 days later, and it would have created another interest in the story again. Instead, Chief Bratton came out and said, "Look, we're not going to wait for the coroner's answer. We're going to say up front, we believe that was our police officer's bullet that killed the child, but it doesn't change the outcome of what happened. The father was still responsible for what took place in that shooting."
This father is not a father of the year, as the family is now attempting to portray him. There are some very significant issues that, and I refuse to allow this department to be maligned in the sense of now trying to portray an individual who held his own daughter out as a human shield and somehow a hero. This guy is not a hero.
No, the media is not out to get us. The common thought in law enforcement is that the media is out to get us, and I find that to be completely untrue. They're just doing their job and to report the information. And it's really up to you on how that information comes out. You can take any event and you can make it positive or negative, and it's really key that you portray whatever information you have in the best light possible, because the media is just a medium presenting the information to the public.
I don't let the media manage our stories. I give them the information that we have, and in most cases there will be follow-up information, and I tell them it will be available as soon as I have it. I try and give them some kind of a timeline when it might be available.
Well, I mean, besides enforcing the laws and taking care of people and protecting their rights and things like that, we're probably the most publicly criticized industry out there. and we're watched and scrutinized for everything we do. And when we're right, we don't get praised, but when we're wrong, we sure get, a tongue lashing out of it. So
I think the biggest fear officers have is that somehow the media is going to pick up on that and reinforce the fact that they think they made a mistake. It doesn't happen very often. Officers really don't make that many mistakes. They really are good at what they do most of the time.
And if something goes wrong and you're not, your best bet is to stand up and say, we're investigating this, we're looking into it, this is a letdown to all of us, we've all been there, we all know you don't have 10,000 employees and they're not all acting perfectly all the time. Nobody expects you to. But the public is very, very interested in ethics in law enforcement. There's nothing scarier to an average person than a cop going bad. A politician going bad or the water department going bad or something, that's bad. But the biggest fear is if the cops go bad, where do you go to address that? And that's really an underlying fear. And that's why I think sometimes police feel they're picked on by the media. It's only because there is that underlying fear that you have all this power to arrest people and take them to jail and so on. They are held to a higher standard.
How many small planes take off and land every day and don't crash? But the one that does makes national news. Car accidents happen every day. There's car accidents going on right now while we're talking. We don't cover them very much unless they're really, really bad, because that's unusual. Fender benders don't get covered for the same reason. And officers who are bad, officers who do something and get caught in the act, and we've seen it over and over again, will get played up in big play because we demand standards from people.
It's a common characteristic of America to be skeptical of government. And a big thing that makes people skeptical of government is a lack of trust or not knowing what government is all about. And the police department is one of the most visible organizations of government out there. And people are distrustful of that because, rightfully so, we can deprive people of their liberties, sometimes even take their lives, and people are distrustful about how we operate. So the more transparent that you can be out there, the better you can be.
I've had police officers say to me, I like you because you're pro-cop. And I always say to them, I'm not pro-cop. It just seems like I am because I'm just fair. If a cop does something wrong, I report it. If a cop does something right, I report it. And I report those things equally.
Giving the media information, being the point person for your department, can be tough. In fact, it may be the hardest job you'll ever do in law enforcement.
This is probably the toughest job I've had in the police department.
I'm the team leader for the special response team. I'm the training manager for the department, all sworn and non-sworn, and staying within state compliance, in charge of the honor guard and a few other things. So this PIO is just one of many duties.
Every job that I've done with the police department, I've taken serious, and but this one is very different. That it's not being the SWAT team. It's not being a gang homicide detective. This is being the department. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I know that I am the department when I'm talking, when I'm representing every officer. I'm representing the chief. So once you understand that and you know that that's how people are going to perceive you, then it really impacts the seriousness of your job and how prepared you get for it.
Absolutely. It's a great job, and it's a lot of responsibility, but I really enjoy it because in my hands, I can make our department look very good and sell us in a very positive way and showcase everything that we have to offer, as well as answer questions and some of the misinformation that people have about law enforcement and what we do.
And the reality is, law enforcement does do really great things. But sometimes we need the media's help to make those things happen.
Wow. The best day, I think, was the day that we created the Amber Alert program here in California. That was given to the CHP at 2 o'clock on the afternoon of July 31st, 2002. At 2 o'clock that night, we had our first one. We were still calling in people to be a part of this unit and gathering equipment. And we had our first one basically 12 hours later, in the dead of night. 2 girls abducted at gunpoint from a lover's lane in Lancaster. And we didn't know where they were, and we put out the first Amber Alert. The media was still coming to grips with what is an Amber Alert, what do we do, how do we do it. It was issued, and that morning a Caltrans worker heard an Amber Alert on KFI radio in Los Angeles, and about the third car that was in line at this site that he was flagging for matched the description. And he got on his two-way radio and called the dispatch, and both the Kern County Sheriff and the CHP responded. The sheriff got there first. They got in a gun battle in the middle of a field, and when they shot the perpetrator, they got up to the car and found both girls bound and gagged in the back seat, and they got them free, and they said he was taking them out in the field to kill them. And if we hadn't gotten there, they'd be dead today. Well, it doesn't get any better than that.
I have respect for police officers because I myself cannot imagine, having worked with them so long on this side of the camera, I cannot imagine what it's like on the other side. I cannot imagine the kind of self-discipline it takes to hide in the bushes wearing a SWAT uniform for 6 or 10 or 12 hours, really having to go to the bathroom or really wishing you could call your wife or check and see how the kids are, but knowing that there's somebody in there who might hurt somebody. Or standing out in a street corner in the pouring rain with the rain running down your neck, making sure the flares get relit because you got a bad fatal accident down the street and it's going to be 2 more hours before they clean the whole thing up. Or having to go into a dark room not knowing if somebody's in there who's going to kill you, not because they don't like you, but because they don't like police officers in general. I cannot imagine having to make that decision of using lethal force and knowing that if it takes you too long to make that decision, that you yourself might be killed or maimed or disabled for life. I have all the respect in the world for people who get up every day and think nothing of putting on that uniform and going out there. And I love telling their stories. And I realize that a lot of them have been burned by the cameras, or a lot of them have an impression of the media as being totally anti-cop. But there are people out there like me who have all the respect in the world, who will treat them objectively, not fall all over them and not go out of my way to make them look great. They're great already. They don't need me to make them look great. But there are a lot of people out there like me who really respect what officers do and really want to tell their story. And if you can find those people, if you're a police officer, you're going to find yourself striking up a conversation with one reporter or one photographer that you just kind of like instantly, and you realize that they, while they may not be on your side, they at least understand what you're doing. And you need to nurture that relationship. You need to find, if you're an officer or a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, you need to find those reporters in your area that really do understand what you're doing and want to understand what you're doing.
The job of media relations has evolved over the last few years as the media has become much larger in its demand for news. And you know, you're silly not to be prepared to get your message out as accurately and as quickly as you can, and to put your department in the best light as you can.
So when you can feature an officer that coaches football after he gets off work, or you can feature an officer that maybe runs the Red Cross in his neighborhood where he lives. That's very important to, number one, show the general public that we are human beings. We're not these guys in uniforms and gals in uniforms. But it also kind of shows, it creates a positive image for the department, and we think it's important.
And I have found that they will always try and help you, whether it's the LA Times or it's a small weekly paper. They'll work with you if you have an established track record of working with them. They'll advocate for you in the newsroom. They'll advocate with you in the editors. They'll advocate for you in the newsroom. And that's what we want to do.
It's ideal to always have something ready to give to the media. The reporters, the local reporters, they do a lot of beat checks. They call around to the different agencies and they say anything going on. More often than not, a lot of PIOs just say nothing going on, all quiet. But really, you should use that opportunity to pitch a positive, ongoing, feature, timeless type story to the media. That's a good opportunity.
You always have to offer the media something positive. If you don't have any events going on, there should be something else within your department that you can talk about. Whether it be promotions within the department, an event that you're doing that's a public safety event, something that really gives them a piece of information they can go back with and present to the public. Because there's always something that you have going on, and the key is to sell it to them and present it in a positive way.
For example, among many police departments today, hiring is very important. When you want to promote hiring or get people to come in and apply, you go through advertising. That's very expensive. A key thing that you can do for your police department to save money, to get your message out there that we're hiring and we're a police department that you want to join, is to have stories that would promote that.
When we're talking to the media, it's not really the media we're talking to. We're talking to the people out there. And we have to keep that in our minds, that the information we're sharing is going beyond that cameraman or that person with a microphone. We're talking to the public, and usually we have some very key information that they want them to know. So it's very important that we treat those people with respect and get our message across clearly, because in the end, it's the public that we're really addressing.
What they want from law enforcement is something that adds the human element to a story. And you can do that. In our case at the Highway Patrol, a lot of our media interviews are involving crashes. There's really nothing you can do for the dead teenagers that are in this car here. But you can use this instance to bring out your traffic safety messages.
One thing that's really popular with reporters is some kind of ride-along. That gives them the access they need. They can see what's going on. They can interview the officers involved. They can interview suspects or arrestees if they get the permission. They get great visuals, usually if it's some kind of serving of an arrest warrant or search warrant. They're right there. That's where they want to be. They want to be right there along with you.
We've had a lot of pursuits in our area in Northern California, and they would call me and say, who have you guys chased and who'd you kill and, what damage have you done? And so I started inviting camera crews to our emergency vehicle operations course and bring them out there and put them in a car and let them see the training that every officer goes through and how stressful it is to do pursuit driving, and let them film that and then show that on the news and let the public see that we're actually training to stop pursuits and what interventions we're taking with the stop sticks and different things like that. So I try to educate them instead of them just condemning us for a policy that we have.
And feed them a few things. When you notice a good story coming up, take them along on a bust. Give them a little favorite treatment. We like that. We like getting the scoop. We like getting the exclusive story. And there's nothing wrong with that. You as officers have something you can give back to us. And it's a two-way street. We will treat you fairly. We'll treat you objectively. Throw us a bone now and then.
And by throwing the media a bone now and then, you'll probably end up creating a relationship with a reporter. That means there's a chance that you may be asked to be a source, and that you may be asked to go on camera. If and when that happens, your interview will either be live or it'll be taped, and you should know which, because there is a difference.
Well, first thing, the difference between live and tape is if you screw up on tape, you just stop talking. And then you just pick up again, and it makes it very easy for them to edit. And for the most part, the reporters and the cameramen want you to look good. So if you don't like the way you said something, stop, and then pick it up again, and just say it again.
Well, whatever you do, if you're doing a television interview, do not wear sunglasses. That's the worst thing that can happen. It takes a lot of the trust away, and it's kind of a visual block. People at home, they want to see you, they want to see your eyes, they want to see how credible you are. Obviously, if you're doing a television interview, you're going into people's homes. Okay, you need to look your best because you're representing your agency, so whether you're wearing a suit or a uniform, you want to look sharp.
The reporters rehearse before they go on camera. You should. The best way to rehearse is just go tell someone the story 2 or 3 times. Tell 2 or 3 different people the story before you ever go in front of the camera. By the time you tell that story about the 3rd time, you've parsed it down to its main components, and you'll come across in a very conversational way, not sounding like a cop, but in a conversational way, just tell the story. If you practice those kinds of things, you'll get it very simply. Now, when you're live, it's much different. The camera's on, it's being fed, everyone's watching it. Your mom's watching it, your captain's watching it, your children are watching it. So you want to look good.
Of course you want to look good, but you also want to be credible. Remember, you're not just speaking for yourself. You're representing your department, your chief, your sheriff. And you'll be more believable, more credible if you look the part.
Some of the things you can do to make yourself look more professional, certainly our uniforms are part of the public image. They've got to be neat and serviceable. If you've got a tie, wear it. If you've got a tie with a tie bar on it, make sure the tie bar is squared away. If you're wearing your name tag, make sure your name tag is grounded properly on the pocket, straight and level, that your badge is in good shape. If you're going to have pins in your pocket, don't have more than 1 or 2 pins in your pocket. Some guys, some of the ladies like to have the Pocket Geek Protector collection. Get it out of there. It doesn't look professional. Ditch the sunglasses, make sure your hair is cut. If you're wearing a mustache, it should be trimmed within department standards. And you should project that favorable image, what the public expects. Part of doing that is looking that image so that when they see you on TV, whether or not they hear what you're saying, they say that man or that woman looks professional and I trust them and I believe them.
People who are completely brave about coming around a corner where there may be armed bank robbers and they've got a gun in their hand and it may be you or him, are chicken when it comes to having a TV camera pointed at them.
I think I'm just more familiar with field situations. I feel more comfortable. There's a guy with a gun, he's doing this, he's doing that. I know what to do. When you're sitting across from a group of reporters at a press conference or you're being interviewed and you're not really sure what the next question is or the angle they're going to take it or which soundbite they're going to use, it's a very delicate situation. You know, it might not be as physically dangerous, but it's very delicate in the way that things are perceived.
You just can't be afraid of that. Officers are brave people, they're highly trained people, they're intelligent people, and if you just stand there and talk to me as a person, all that bravery and intelligence is going to come through, and as they say in a shooting, your training will take over.
River City Watch Commander Lieutenant Vernon, can I help you?
Hi, Lieutenant. This is Jody Hammond from Fox 4 News.
Hi, Jody. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's kind of slow over here, though, in the newsroom. Got anything going?
There's nothing really breaking today, but there might be a story that you might be interested in. So homicides are down significantly in the city this year compared to last, and if you're interested in doing a story like that, maybe we could put something together.
Well, I'm always looking for good news stories.
How about if I hook you up with the homicide detective for an interview, and if you'd like, I could even give you a ride along with an officer maybe to go out and interview him on patrol and kind of talk about both aspects of the detectives and the patrol.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. Tell you what, give me your phone number, I'll make a couple of calls, and then I'll give you a call back.
Okay, here's my cell number.
Okay.
It's 555 716 2111.
716-2111.
Right.
All right. Thanks for calling. I'll give you a call back in a few minutes.
Okay, Lieutenant. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Detective. First of all, I'd like you to just look at me rather than the camera when we have our interview. And please talk to me conversationally rather than using police formal language. That makes it easier for everyone to understand. And this is on tape, so that if you make a mistake or you want to do it again, we've got lots of tape, and we can do that. It's not live. And if I could get your name and rank and have you spell it for me so we have it on camera.
Yes, I'm Detective Joel Arding, last name Arding. I'm a detective in the Homicide Division of River City PD.
What can you tell me about the homicide rate this year in River City?
There's some good news. We're holding down the homicide rate. There's a big reduction this year, and we're very proud of that.
Can I have you take off your glasses? And then if you have to look at me, just try not to look at the lens. Okay. All right. Sure. Thanks.
The men and women who serve here in River City have reason to celebrate today. That's because the number of homicides recorded since the beginning of the year has dropped dramatically. Now, other crimes are down as well, but it's that homicide rate that is most impressive. Over time, River City records an average of 18 homicides a year, but last year that number jumped to 26. This year to date, the number is just 7.
We're really doing well. We're holding the homicide rate way down this year. We're very proud of that fact.
The detective says half the crimes committed in River City can be pinned on street gangs, and that the drop in murders can be directly related to gang injunctions and aggressive anti-gang enforcement.
We've secured injunctions against gang members. These injunctions prevent the gang members from congregating together. Along with this, we have a gang task force made of patrol officers, detectives, and narcotics officers. They all work together in aggressive enforcement action to target these street crimes. With these tactics, we feel that we've really prevented homicides and other violent crimes in the area.
Typically, we deploy anywhere from 7 to 10 units out in the field.
Officer Lewis supervises field units on River City's Day Watch. He says the lower crime statistics are encouraging, but that the officers know those numbers can go right back up again if they don't stay on top of things.
Once you get that reduction, it's imperative to keep working hard to keep that number low, because it could easily get up high without the hard work that we give out in the field. My supervisor lets us know where we're at statistically, but then again, he also lets us know that there's room for improvement.
Officers know that luck plays a part in all of this. River City didn't record its first homicide of the year until May, but then during the next 5 months, there were 6 additional homicides, and there have been more shootings that took place where the victims lived. As one told me, it's good to live here in River City where we have good hospitals and bad shots. I'm Jody Hammond reporting for Fox 4 News.
One of the biggest complaints that I frequently hear is the media never comes out and covers the good stuff. And I say, did you bother to let them know that the good stuff is going on? And the answer was, well, no, I didn't really.
Remember, you work at your department, so you know what's going on there. A reporter doesn't know until you tell him or her. So if you always have a message ready, you always have an opportunity to give the press a positive story. And since beat checks are part of the job for the news media, you'll probably have contact with the press on a regular basis. You already know they're looking for news. But here's the thing. You can use those beat checks to your advantage, because reporters aren't just looking for bad news, they're looking for any kind of news. So even if there's nothing breaking, no murder or mayhem, if you offer them a positive story, they might just cover it. Again, since you're creating the relationship with the reporter or anyone else in the media, you may be asked to appear on camera, so you need to look your part. Uniform neat, suit clean and pressed. Remember, you're representing your department, and you want the public to have confidence not just in you, but in all of the men and women you represent. Never, ever wear sunglasses. It's uncomfortable for viewers. They can't see your eyes and they think you're hiding something. And when you speak in a conversational manner. Don't use cop talk. The public doesn't understand 10 codes and jargon. As you just saw, the media wants you to look good because if you look good, they look good.
I don't like all the cop talk, and actually we're trying to persuade the deputies to get away from using a lot of codes and go back to plain, simple language.
You want to sound as conversational, as friendly as you can, because your audience is the public. And when you start using codes or you start using different police lingo, people don't understand that. And it's important that they do understand what you're saying. So, you want to say suspect is one of those words that we pretty much are universal. People pretty much know that. Some jurisdictions call them perpetrators. Some jurisdictions call them actors. But suspect's pretty generic. But you don't want to say things like, the automobile. You just say car. Things that are normal. Don't say things like the suspect alighted from the automobile. Just say the suspect got out of the car. And as simple as you can keep it, the better off it is in terms of trying to get the message across.
And you're much more likely to get that message across if you have a good relationship with the media. That means being responsive and available. If a reporter pages or calls you or leaves a voicemail message, Follow up as quickly as possible. Find out if the reporter is on deadline, and if so, what that deadline is. If you can't answer a question, explain why, or direct the reporter to someone who can. The reality is, customer service is everything when it comes to media relations, because you never know when you may need the media.
We absolutely will need the media. At some time in your career, you will need to get on the phone and call up every contact that you've ever made because you've got a missing child or a missing elderly person, or you've got a dangerous suspect that is on the loose, and you will need their help. And this is a good time for you to kind of cash in on all of the favors that you've done for them, and they'll be happy to help you because that's news for them. It's a good story. They know they're going to get what they need to make a story, whether it's good news or bad news. If we've got a murder on the loose or something, but there will come a time where you will need them, and they will be there for you.
You know, these days, cameras are everywhere. Surveillance cameras, civilians using cameras, cameras in squad cars, media cameras. You have to assume that at any given time, you could be watched. And that's why, especially at a crime scene, when you know there are cameras showing up, you need to be aware of how you are perceived.
Again, you're representing your agency not just with what you say, but how you look when you say it. One of the things that comes to mind when you're out at a scene, I know when officers in our agency get to a homicide scene, once the homicide team gets there, they're just kind of basically at the perimeter. And you know how cop humor can be sometimes. They're telling jokes off by the side. And you know, if some camera person is at the scene of this multi-homicide and they see a couple of officers laughing over on the side, they're going to wonder why that was. And there's a perfect explanation, but just be aware that you could be on camera at any time, anywhere while you're on duty. I think if the Rodney King incident taught us one thing, it's that assume that there's a camera on you every moment that you're out there. You do the job the way you're trained and the way the law says, you've got no problems.
My uncle was a retired Pasadena police officer, and 18 years ago at the academy, he stopped me and he said, if there's one bit of advice that I can give you as a police officer, always remember this, is somewhere, anytime, someone is always watching you, whether it's an old lady with insomnia in the alley who can't sleep at night. She's going to be watching out her window, and she's going to see what's going on.
If the helicopter captures a couple of cops slinging their batons at a suspect overhead when they don't know they're being watched, that gets on CNN and it gets on all the local news and it plays over and over and over again, and every officer in the world's going to say, look, they're picking on us. Excuse me, those guys should have remembered that the camera is always on now. In this day and age, there is always a camera. It may be a store security camera. It may be a person with a home video camera. It could be a TV news photographer passing by. It could be a helicopter overhead. Cops have to realize there's always a camera on somewhere, somehow. Always act like the camera's on, because it probably is.
If you always remember that, you will always do well and you will never get in trouble. And it's something that I always remembered. Of course, a good set of ethics and morals and being raised well and good training within the police department helps as well. But really, it's come down to reality today that the proliferation of cameras, whether it's from the media or private ownership or security cameras, are always out there. And that's a good thing. If you were a moral, upstanding police officer working for an upstanding professional police department, that's a good thing, because we're out there doing our job every day, and if you're doing it that way, you really have nothing to fear. Those cameras, if nothing else, should be able to show, be able to exonerate you for anything that someone would accuse you of.
Our TV cameras have saved officers' careers because we happened to be there in an officer-involved shooting. A case comes to mind of a man who was standing downtown in San Diego with a gun in his hand. Our camera crew had just wrapped up from a news conference, and they suddenly saw that there are two police officers who are drawn down on this man. They both have their guns pointed at this man, and he has the gun down at his side. And all of a sudden, they opened fire. And they shot and killed him. And we had it on tape. The videotape is still used today in training, because if you take people who are police recruits and you say to them, now watch this carefully and watch the shooting happen in real action, and our cameras caught it, and then you ask them after they've watched it in real action, how many of you think they fired too soon? And about a third of the people raised their hand. How many think they fired too late? Another third raised their hands. How many people think it was a good, clean shooting? When you look at it again in slow motion, what you see is exactly what was supposed to happen happened. The man's barrel of the gun came up, and it was very clearly in the video. You could see the barrel coming up. He had started to move the gun up, and they opened fire. That tape saved two officers' careers, because there were every other witness around there said they'd shot him in cold blood, that he never moved. But those cops, instead of watching the man's eyes, instead of watching each other, they were watching the important part of that picture. They were watching the end of the barrel of that gun. And our camera caught that on tape. And that videotape from a TV news crew is what was the difference between those officers maybe going the rest of their lives, maybe themselves not knowing if they'd done the right thing. That tape showed that they'd done the right thing at the right time. So we can be the officer's friend.
And while the press can be the officer's friend, let's face it, they can also be a pain. Like when we're at a crime scene trying to conduct an investigation, or at an accident trying to control traffic, or interviewing witnesses. And they keep asking us questions about what we're doing, what happened, wanting details. And they're pointing a camera at the scene. But the reality is, the press is the eyes and the ears of the public. And they have a right to be at a crime scene or an accident, whether we like it or not.
Well, we have to understand that the Fourth Estate is very much there. It's part of our society, and it's written into our own laws, into our own government. It's something that's well recognized, and it's something that, for the most part, American democracy and Americans are proud of.
Having been born and spent the first 9 years of my life in a communist country, I have firsthand seen oppression of the press and also censorship. And that is one of the reasons that I was very interested in this job, is because I believe that a free media has to share information with the public, and it is my job to give them all the information. There is nothing that we have to hide from the people because we work for them. And that is something very key that every PIO and every law enforcement professional needs to remember in their career.
There's certain information that we have to give them. I mean, we have to tell them, if we arrest somebody, that person's name, that person's age, where that person lives. We have to give some information about the circumstances of the incident. That's all public information. We have to give it to them. You can't say, no, we're not going to give it to you. That'll get your agency in trouble. As far as access, I believe the press can be where the public is located. The public can be where the press is located.
Anything that's in public, they have a right to shoot. Anywhere where the average member of the community is allowed to be, they're allowed to be. So we can't control them as far as we want all the media in this corner, but yet you had all the neighbors and stuff at the other end of it. They have a right to know, what are we doing? What are we investigating? What's happening? So we can not keep that to ourselves and tell them nothing's going on, nothing to see, move on. And they're very creative about how they get their shots. We might have a tape on the first floor level, but they're able to talk to a neighbor or a business, get up on the roof and shoot down onto our scene. And a lot of the officers get concerned about that or upset about that. Again, if they have a right to be and that they have permission to be there, there's nothing we could do. A lot of the detectives get concerned because they'll shoot a dead body. We're not the good taste police. You know, if they want to put that on their TV channel, we have no control over that.
They may or may not have a press pass. They may try other avenues to get into your crime scene, such as going to a neighbor's home and asking to come into their yard and maybe take pictures from an angle from a private residence into a crime scene. They can get on the roof or look over the fence. And it does make it difficult because we don't necessarily have control all of the time.
Well, clearly, If a reporter shows up on scene, they're trying to get their story. They're trying to meet their deadlines. Like the law enforcement officers, they have a job to do. A reporter has a job to do. They have a story to file, whether it's a newspaper reporter or a television reporter. We're always better off working with them, giving them the information that we can give without compromising the investigation.
Understanding what information you can provide to them, what information you should not provide to them. Understanding that you should only be giving things that you know to be a fact, and what I mean to be a fact is something that isn't going to change. At the same time, you can talk about things perhaps that aren't quite at the level of a fact yet, but you need to qualify them and help them understand by giving them background.
Well, first of all, let's cover the worst case scenario. You don't like the tape that has just been shot, or the pictures that have been shot by the still photographer, or you don't like the audio that a radio station has just taken. That's just too bad. It's their property, and they get to keep it. And if you try and take it away, you're going to be on Nightline, CNN, and everything else that you never wanted to be on, because they're going to be using you as a piñata to teach a class on how not to P.O. the press and get them mad at you. You cannot take their tapes. They have a legal and constitutional right to take that footage. You cannot take it. If you do, like I said, you're going to end up not only embarrassing yourself, but your peer group and your entire agency, because it will be, at least if it's not a regional or statewide story, it could be national. So let them take their shots.
If a reporter is on a public sidewalk, you can't tell them to leave. You can't tell them to turn off the camera. You can't take their film away. They have a right to be there. They're doing their jobs. I think it's important for law enforcement just to be aware that they're going to be at a lot of critical incidents. They're going to be there, and to find ways to work with them than against them.
And sometimes finding ways to work with them, letting the media take their shots, can mean balancing your work with theirs.
Right. In my role as the PIO, I think on both sides, I'm seen as an outsider. The reporters, the media, see me as a police officer, and that I'm, going to take that role. Where the police officers see me as an outsider, that I'm a friend of the media, therefore I'm taking their side. So it's tough to get both sides to see me as their friend and not their adversary. For the police officers to feel comfortable around me and talk to me and let me know what's going on without them believing that every word they're telling me I'm going to pass on to the media. And for the media to believe me that I'm not holding anything back from them, that I'm giving them as much as I can without jeopardizing the tactical situation or the investigation.
And that can mean literally creating a fine line between your investigation and their reporting of that investigation.
Well, the fine line is yellow tape. You get the yellow tape up, and you've reduced the likelihood that you're going to have a problem. We've had numerous situations where media will show up at about the same time as the first responding officers. And one of the first things that the media will ask is, please put up the yellow tape so I know where the crime scene is, so I don't go in and ruin any evidence.
After you get some experience, you realize that there's a line that you don't cross, and it doesn't have to be a piece of yellow tape in front of you. It can be just not encroaching in that space. If an officer is talking to a distraught woman with a baby in her arms and her husband's inside with a gun to the other child's head, you don't want to go interrupt that conversation. You can stand back 10 feet and get everything you need. By the same token, if there's something that people out there have to know right now because the guy got away and he's running down the street, then you're perfectly all right walking up to the officer and say, how can I help?
And if you're a first responder, there's a good chance that the reporter on scene may be asking you those questions. How can I help? What happened here? Who's involved? So it may be up to you to talk about the incident.
And we have 7,100 uniformed personnel, and we like to think that each one of them is able to represent us to the media and to the public. And when they're dealing with the media, they are talking to the public in general, and they're speaking on behalf of this entire department. Now, to some people, that gets to be a little, scary if they haven't done much of it. But for the most part, We try and tell them it involves only 2 skills: talking, which they've been doing since they were 3, and knowing what the CHP is all about and the laws. And they've been trained to do that at the academy, or they wouldn't be wearing the badge and the uniform.
Absolutely. When the media shows up and there's officers on the scene, they're going to want to talk to them. And it's really key that those officers can convey to those media folks the message.
Because, first of all, that's who the public runs into. They do more PR out in the field in a day than I could ever do in a lifetime, because that's who the public comes in contact with. Who's the most important person at the CHP at any time? It's the person you're talking to. It's not the commissioner, it's not our mascot, it's not me. It's whoever that person is, because that person is the CHP to the rest of the outside world.
There may have been a time 20 years ago where you didn't want your officers talking to the police, talking to the press, because your officers just weren't up to it. But now, look at the people we have in the field now. I mean, I've been doing this for the better part of 30 years, and I've seen the caliber of police officer improve so much. Now, when you open the doors and recruit officers, you're getting people with 1 college degree, sometimes 2 college degrees, people with military experience, people who've learned to think on their feet long before they stepped in the academy. And we got smart cops out there, and I love talking to them.
The press and the media is not your enemy. They have a job, you have a job. We can use them to our advantage and use them as another tool or resource. And I think it's really important that we take advantage of all the public access that we can get from the media. And a lot of people look at it as a negative thing. They're going to make me look bad, but I think it's really up to us to put them to positive use.
The law is that anything that is public information as part of a public record, whether it be calls for service, the type of incident, synopsis of the incident, has to be available to the public. We're a public agency. And I think, especially with the newer guys who haven't been exposed to their role within the city government, see it as we're the police department, we're not part of anyone else. We do our own thing. And it's difficult for them to realize that we have to justify sometimes and explain to the community what it is that we did and why we did it. They've come from the academy, they're working the night shift, and they're very much away from the mainstream within the department, within the city government. So when somebody shows up and is looking over their shoulder or questioning what they're doing, they don't know how to react or how to answer that.
The TV stations don't want to make you look bad. They don't want to make you sweat. They don't want to make you look like you're guilty. They just want to get a good story. And they want you to be at your best when you're giving it to them.
We can be really annoying sometimes, but we do that on behalf of the people out there who can't take the time, who have jobs and kids to raise and mortgages to pay and don't have the time to get down and find out for themselves. So when an officer deals with a person from the media, the officer's really dealing with 10 or 20 or 50,000 other people who can't be right there talking to him.
In most situations, talking to the press means giving the public information about either a breaking story or an event that has already taken place. But there are times when talking to the press can literally mean the difference between life and death. During a disaster, like a fire or an earthquake, the law says the press has special rights because it's up to them to get the message, whatever it is, out to the public. Now, you already know that the press can be kept out of a crime scene. You create a perimeter and decide where they can take their shots. But in the case of a disaster, the press has special privileges you need to know about.
A disaster has been ruled slightly different than a crime scene. So let's go to the scenario of an earthquake, which is highly likely here in California. Law enforcement's job is to secure the perimeter. The fire department and the EMS providers will be performing rescues. We'll be securing streets and locations and buildings from looting. That's our primary responsibility. If the media wants to get inside that area and it isn't a crime scene, meaning no glass has been broken, no one has looted a building, no one has stolen anything, they're entitled to get that shot. They cannot go into that business, but they can shoot the scene of that business. We must let them do that, like it or not.
Disaster scenes are covered by 409.5 of the California Penal Code, and it's a fairly short section, but it does say that you are allowed, when you have a natural disaster, riot, civil disobedience, or a major health hazard, you can close that area to the general public. But at the very end of the section, it says you can't close it to the media. They have a right to come in. They don't have a right to interfere with police, fire, paramedics, any other emergency people, but they have a right to go in. We had a classic example during the fires, the Cedar Fire in San Diego, where people were evacuated from a community neighborhood called Scripps Ranch, where all the houses went. They were not able to get back in for quite some time, but under 409.5, the media were allowed in.
Hey, Mikey, check it out. Here they come again. Oh, the news guys? Yep. I hate these guys. They're always messing everything up for us. Yeah, they can be kind of hard to deal with sometimes, but they were pretty helpful last year when that little girl got lost in the hills, so who knows, maybe they'll help us out this time. That's true. We'll see what happens.
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
I'm Jody Hammond from Fox 4 News.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, what's going on?
So far, all we know is that we have a dead body on the hillside.
Okay. And why's the police department here?
Well, the police department and the sheriff's department are trying to figure out who has jurisdiction here. This is actually on the border of a county land and city property, so we're not really sure who's going to be handling the scene at this time.
Oh, okay. Okay. Can I do an on-camera interview with you?
Sure, that'd be okay. Is it going to be taped or is it going to be live?
It's taped and we'll air it later.
Okay.
And if I could get the...
Come over here a little bit. Sure.
If I could get the spelling of your name and your title, please.
Sure, it's Deputy Mike Dodardo, D-O-D-A-R-D-O, and I'm with the sheriff's department.
And if you could just tell me at this point everything that you do know about this case.
Sure. This morning we received a call from a woman who'd been hiking on the hillside that during her hike she came across a body of a male. At this point we don't know much more than that other than it looks like it might be foul play.
Okay. This is a rather remote area. Any idea how long this body could have been there?
I don't have any details about that right now, but I can get you in touch with the public information officer, and they'll probably have a briefing for you folks a little bit later on today. And he'll have a lot more details for you than I will.
Okay. Do you have a card?
I do.
Okay. I appreciate that. Also, it's kind of hard to see the scene from the road here. Any chance I can get my cameraman a little bit closer?
Well, I can't let you inside the crime scene or past the tape, but what I can do is move this crime scene tape back, maybe to the bumper, and your guy can come in this way and maybe get a better shot. Is that all right?
That would be very helpful.
Help you out with that, Mike? Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks.
If you could just make sure he stays outside the tape, that'd be great.
Of course.
Oh, hold up.
Okay, Ray, you want to, maybe just a little closer in this way. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank you. Sure.
Always remember that just like you, the press is there to do a job. And it's a lot easier for both you and for them if you work with them. The first thing you should do in the case of a crime scene is to create a perimeter. Use the yellow tape. It's official. And it's a barrier between the public, the press, and your investigation. Understand that the press is there to report the news, not to hamper your investigation, not to make you look bad, just to get information and to get it back to the newsroom. If you're asked to comment on camera, talk in simple language that people can understand. Don't offer an opinion, just give the facts. And keep in mind, the more efficiently the press can do their job, the faster you can get back to your job. When we talk about the media, we're talking about 4 basic information outlets: newspapers, radio, television, and the internet. And of those 4, 2 have the ability to go live at any given time and show the public exactly what's happening as it happens. Both radio and television love being on scene during a crisis situation. They call it breaking news. And it's always breaking news when the situation is a matter of life and death. That can mean anything from a high-speed chase to a SWAT incident. What's more, if it's breaking news, chances are very good that it's also being broadcast live. And live television isn't filtered or edited.
Believe it or not, first of all, when it comes to live, The media pretty much knows today now, having gone through this now for about the last 10 years, is they recognize the significance of the safety problem that creates when they're filming live. And for the most part, and this has gone through some of their own ethical dilemmas and discussions within their own profession, is that they will pan back and understand that they don't want to be showing police officers moving onto a situation.
We can first of all restrain ourselves from showing what the officers are doing so that the person inside a house in a hostage situation can't turn their TV set on and get an idea where the SWAT officers are. We do that as a matter of responsibility because there's no television station. We'll talk about TV because it's the most immediate, most graphic way of transmitting images. There is no television station in this country that wants to be a part of placing officers or hostages or victims in jeopardy.
They don't want to jeopardize the lives of a hostage. They don't want to jeopardize the lives of a police officer. I know a lot of police officers, as they watch me say this, they're going to laugh, but the media does have a certain set of ethics. They are not going to film, while they may film it, they are not going to broadcast certain things that are gory, people who have been killed.
Nobody wants to have that on their hands. Nobody wants to have that in their conscience. We do everything we can to not show what police are doing as they're doing it, so that it might give a suspect an advantage. We do everything we can not to show dead bodies or gruesome wounded people. We do everything we can to remember that our audience has certain levels of taste that we want to stay inside, and that police officers have certain levels of security that we want to stay outside of so that we don't interfere. We really don't try to interfere, but sometimes we get caught up in it in spite of ourselves. Sometimes the helicopter just happens to be overhead at a time when the suspect runs out the door and opens fire, and it happens. What'll happen then is you won't see that scene again on tape. Later on, it'll be edited carefully, it'll be freeze framed before the action happens.
But a critical part of the action, one that goes on behind the scenes of a large incident, is managing the media. That means keeping them and officers as safe as possible. It may also mean using the media to let the public know what's going on. It could include regular briefings, and it always means giving information in a calm, honest manner.
The important thing that people want to see in a large breaking situation like that is, are we going to be okay? And regardless of whatever facts you've been able to gather, the first thing that I'm prepared to do is get up there on the camera and put things in perspective in such a way that people understand that they're going to be okay.
Some of the things that you can do to reassure the public is tell them what resources you have available. If you have an event going on, let them know that you have so many people working here, that you have the SWAT team possibly, that you have a helicopter, canines. Let them know all the resources that you're using from your agency, other agencies, because to them that says, aha, that's what they're doing, I understand, they're working on it, and they're really looking for whatever event is going on.
That we have, for example, in a school shooting, that we have the school contained, the situation contained. We are conducting rescues of students and evaluating what's going on. We have snipers standing by to try to determine if we have the suspects that we can take out. We have a number of things that you can do to let people know that they're going to be okay, in addition to things like where to contact the school or how to get a hold of your child, where to find them, whether the situation is contained or not, and so on. All those things can contribute to helping people understand initially and give you a message to go out there. In a breaking news story like that, in a large one, you may not have a lot of facts going in. But what you can say, go out there and say is, are we going to be okay? Answer the question, are we going to be okay?
It's very important in this case, in case of a hostage situation, that you have the media back out of the area so perhaps it's not even viewable by the people inside. You don't want the hostage takers to have any kind of a reaction to the presence of news media. Not that they might not have a TV or radio inside and hear it, but it's better to have them, in this case, out of the way, out of any kind of live fire range, out of visual range for the people inside. Because you're really weighing what the media wants and what the public has a right to know, but you're weighing that against a very important other right, and that's the rights to maintain control of the situation, make sure nobody inside that house or wherever the hostage thing is going on is in any more danger as a result of the presence of the media. And sometimes that's just a simple thing of keeping the media out of sight. You also don't want the media getting live pictures of officers surrounding a house or what the tactics are and where they are.
Find a place, an angle, that you can bring the media in to give them a different vantage point so that they can help to tell the story. Because this may actually help you to put people at ease of what's going on, to help get the message out that we don't want the public coming into this area and causing more of a problem by coming here. There's a variety of reasons that you want that message to go out. So you can use all those kinds of things to help manage the situation, and just take it minute by minute. Don't try to rush through it. Understand and prioritize what's going on.
911 emergency.
There's a man with a gun. There's a man with a gun here, and I don't know what's gonna. He's got a gun, and I think he shot some. He might be shooting somebody. You have to come here now, please.
Okay, ma'am. Try to calm down. Where are you located?
We're just off the highway. We're at 2772 Loker. He's got a gun, and I think he's gonna shoot somebody.
Okay, ma'am. We'll have someone there.
Please come now. Please hurry.
Reports of shots fired. Possible hostage again. Code in at 2772 Loker.
I need you to break from the press conference right now and get over to Loker off the highway. Shots fired and possible hostage situation. 339 to 99 break and go to 277.
CHP has closed off Highway 101 between Sycamore and Chaparral. All units must be used. Bobby, can you tell us anything about the situation?
Right now I don't have any information as to what the event is that's happening. As soon as I do, I'll meet everybody right back here. I'll get the information you need and we can move forward with the investigation.
Are you in contact with this?
Are you doing okay?
Is this man involved?
Was there any shots fired?
Do you know anything about
any information? Everybody ready? Kind of a quick briefing on what we have going on today. About 10 o'clock this morning, the communications center received numerous calls reporting that a man with a gun had entered a business at the 2700 block of Loker. Units responded. We initiated a SWAT call out to establish a large perimeter as well as secure the area. We've been able to do so at this point. It's not quite secure where we'd like it, but as soon as it is, we'll make sure that everybody has a particular area or a shot that we can get. What we do know at this point is a man with a gun has entered the business. He has taken one female hostage, so we have a hostage scenario, and we believe it's domestic violence or domestic related. Again, shots were fired here, and we are investigating this as such. We have initiated a call with our hostage negotiation team. They will respond to this particular location as well. And right now, what we're trying to do is secure the perimeter, make sure that everything here is secure. Once that is done, we'll make sure everybody can get a little better shot, a little closer. And in about 30 minutes or so, I'm going to try to get back over here and give you a little bit more information.
Are you in contact with the hostage taker?
We are not at this point. Our negotiations team will be here. They will establish a communication link with him, and hopefully from that point we'll be able to see exactly what his needs or demands may be.
Do you know who the suspect is?
At this point, we are not going to release the identity of the suspect, but as soon as we can, I will make sure that information is known.
Have there been any weapons found?
Not yet. Again, one was utilized, though. We do have reports of shots fired, so we do know at least one shot was fired. Other than that, we haven't found any other weapons.
Why can't you just go on in and get them if there's only two people in there?
Typically what we have is time on our side. We do not want to jeopardize the safety of the suspect or the victim. And if we rush in, that may do that. What we want to do at this point is establish a communication link with the suspect, find out exactly what his concerns or demands may be. If we can establish that link with him, most likely we'll be able to resolve this peacefully.
So you have not been in contact?
We have not been in contact at this point.
Do you know what time that this occurred?
As far as time goes and how long we've been inside, we started receiving phone calls at about 10 o'clock. It's just about 1 o'clock now, so we have a 3-hour window or 3-hour scenario where we do have people inside, at least one person. Everybody else was able to get out, but we do have one left inside with the suspect. Any other questions?
Posted. Thank
I'll
you.
let you know.
Thank you very much.
As you can see here. And that was Sergeant Bobby Davis.
Lisa, come here, please. I understand you have information from a coworker inside the business.
I do. In fact, I have a filmed interview talking about a love triangle, maybe at the root of this.
But what we do know and what I do understand is that there was a relationship. It's a romantic relationship and possibly a love triangle type of a connection. What I'm asking is for you not to run that interview. Potentially, and it could be harmful to the hostage negotiation. If the suspect inside the business sees this interview, it may inflame him and ultimately cause him to injure the victim. So what we would really appreciate is if you would not shoot that or show that, especially on television.
I understand.
Thank you. You guys can come on over. Come on over the hill, please. Just real quick, what I appreciate is the fact that you're not shooting the officers' tactical movements. Obviously, it's for their safety as well as the safety of the hostages and the victim and the suspect. So please, just remember that and just try to be cognizant of that fact. Basically what we have is a scenario where we have a man inside, a 48-year-old man who has taken a hostage. The other people that were inside at the moment that it took place were able to get out. The victim inside is a relative of the man. At this particular time, we have established a communication link with our negotiation team, and they are speaking to him, ultimately trying to get him out. Any questions?
Can you tell us what the relationship is?
The relationship between the suspect and the hostage or victim is a man and wife relationship.
And what are the names of the suspect and the victim?
We can't release that at this point in the investigation. As soon as it comes to a conclusion and the suspect is in custody, we'll be able to provide that information.
Has there been previous domestic violence?
At this point, what we do know is there's a restraining order against the suspect from the victim. So there has been some situation in the past where a judge has deemed it necessary to provide a restraining order for the victim.
Where are the suspect and the victim located in the building?
They are located inside the building. Again, a little bit of our tactics come into play. We're not going to provide an exact location, but they are inside and they are secured in that area with our SWAT team holding their perimeter positions, making sure that the suspect and the victim cannot get out.
And they are together?
Yes, they are together.
Do you know if the victim is injured or is she okay?
From what we understand, the victim is okay. But again, that's just preliminary information that we've been able to get from other witnesses that came out. We have started speaking with the suspect. Those are many of the things that we are asking him. Ultimately, until we can get her out, we won't know exactly for sure whether or not she is completely 100% physically okay.
Can we speak to the victim?
At the end of the investigation, if the victim feels it's necessary or is comfortable with coming and speaking to the media, she can do that of her own will. And it's nothing that we will set up at this point.
What about any drugs involved in the situation?
I don't know anything about that.
I know the street's blocked off at the beginning of the entrance to some of the residents. Do you know when that will be open?
As soon as the conclusion of this thing comes to, the roadway will be reopened. And at this point, we have it closed to make sure that everybody in the surrounding area, people coming back to their homes, will be safe. Any other questions? Again, I'd like to thank you for not showing the tactical movements of our SWAT team. It's very important that things that they do are not revealed for their safety and the safety of the people inside the business. Thank you.
Quick question. What
Yes.
about the families? I think they're here. Are they involved?
Even if the family was involved, we wouldn't discuss their involvement. Potentially, it could be harmful for the investigation. Thank you.
Was Gary?
Oh,
Was it Gary? Oh, I know Gary. I know Gary Elwood.
No, yeah.
Is it Gary Elwood?
Everybody's good? As you can see, we had a successful conclusion to this hostage situation that we had. It's been about a 6-hour situation. Essentially this morning we had a call about 10 o'clock indicating that a man had come into the business on Loker, that he had a handgun, and that he had taken a female hostage. What we do know is that that female was his wife. She was hostage inside the business for roughly 6 hours. Our hostage negotiation team came in. They established a communication link with the suspect and were able to ultimately get the suspect to let the hostage go. Shortly thereafter, the suspect also surrendered to law enforcement without incident, and at this point the investigation is ongoing. What we do know is that he did fire a round inside, and there were other witnesses inside the business, and everybody was able to get out safely. And at this point, again, the investigation is ongoing. Any questions?
Can we talk with the victim?
Not at this point. She is a major part of this investigation, and ultimately at the end of the investigation itself, if the victim would like to come forward and speak, she can do so. It's not anything that we set up.
Can we talk to the negotiators?
Not at this time in the investigation. Down the road, if the negotiators would like to speak, or we have a situation where we can set that up for you, we will.
Does the suspect have any priors?
Actually, the government code precludes me from talking about the previous history of the suspect. The only thing I can tell you, because it is public information, is there was a restraining order in place, and that was verified today.
So what kind of charges will he be facing?
He could face charges up to and including assault with a deadly weapon and kidnapping and violation of restraining order, and then anything else that the district attorney sees fit as a result of the events that took place today.
What can you tell us about the traffic that was caused here today?
We had a big traffic backup, and basically the safety of the community takes precedence over the traffic, and that's what we had to do today by stopping the traffic to make sure that everybody was going to be safe here in this environment.
Where would they be taking the suspect now?
He'll be going down to the county jail, and from there, if he wishes to speak, the investigation will continue.
Is the subject on medication? Is he a mental patient? Anything like that?
Any of his history like that we're precluded from talking about.
Was the gun his?
I don't know. That'll be something that they check and ultimately see if he did have a weapon.
What kind of gun was it?
As a handgun.
Any special description on that handgun?
No. Any other questions? Is that it? Thank you.
Thank you. Again, that was Sergeant Bobby Davis with the Sheriff's Department.
I think when you have a critical incident like that, it's important to have a PIO on scene to deal with the media. You can almost guarantee the media will show up on scene, and it's better to work with them in a situation like that by telling them, we need you to stay in this area, or to get them the information they need to do their stories. I think in a situation like that, it's important to have regular briefings. Whether they're every hour, every half hour, or when you have something to announce. The expression quite often is feed the beast. They're going to be there. Let's try to work with them. And who knows, there might be a situation where you need to go to them because you might be looking for a suspect. You might be looking for a vehicle that's involved. You might be looking for a missing person. They're going to be there. Let's use them as a tool, and hopefully they can help your investigation.
Well, the first thing you've got to do yourself is get your facts together and know what you want to convey to the public. First is let the folks know that are watching or listening or even reading the papers or catching you on the internet these days that you're on scene. You can tell them, if there's not a tactical situation, how many people you have on the scene, that you've responded with overwhelming staffing to handle this event, that you're going to be here until everything is safe and secure and the suspect is in custody. And beyond that, start looking at some of the other ripple effects that closing down a neighborhood has. We may have parents separated from their children. We may have daycare situations where moms and dads can't leave homes. We may have to address evacuation areas, evacuation routes, sheltering, feed and care. All these things have to be thought about when you're going into a protracted operation that's going to impact a lot of folks. Also, alternative routing for traffic patterns is extremely important. Things that you do as a police officer at the scene that'll help you is deciding how big your perimeter is, using the famous yellow tape. You can make your perimeter as big as you want to, as long as the media has access to the areas that they're entitled to. So if you have one cartridge in the middle of a street, a half a mile from your scene, and you think that you need to have that as part of the forensic evidence, you can certainly tape that, and you can have a perimeter that's a half a mile in length, if you like. But remember that the press and the public have a right to know. Try and work with them, get out the message, and I think that that is the way we reassure the public that we're there to protect and serve them.
Well, me as a PIO, when I'm responding to a situation like that, I'm already managing it prior to me getting to the scene. Typically what happens is I'm notified of a situation, let's say a hostage situation. And while I'm en route to the scene, I'm on the phone with the event commander or my operations bureau, and they're giving me information. At the same time, I'm also probably at this point getting calls from the media. So I'm giving them preliminary information in terms of what I know. I'm also talking to the event commander and advising him to set up an area for the media, letting him know that I am getting calls from the media and they are going to respond. And to make things easy for everybody, and I'm talking about for the media and for the police officers at the scene, to set up a staging area for the media. And that could be something as simple as just designating a corner near the location to setting up a parking lot. It depends on the magnitude of the situation. So en route to the situation, I'm talking to the event commander and I'm telling him, okay, do me a favor, designate one officer to pull the media together and tell that officer to let the media know that I am responding or somebody from my office is responding from public affairs. Typically when I arrive at the scene, the first thing I'll do is I'll go over to the media, be it camera, radio, print, and I'll tell them, I just arrived, I want to get briefed, and as soon as I get briefed, I'll come back and I'll brief you.
Everybody has to understand that the first information you get at an event is usually the least reliable because everybody is just there and just learning what's going on. TV stations and radio stations are not going to stop and wait until everybody is comfortable that they know. They want to know now. It's part of what they do for a living. And unfortunately, this is also the time when the public is most interested in the event or the story you're talking about. So it's very critical that you have whatever you give out to the media at that point, it be something you're very comfortable knowing that you know this is the facts. This isn't just speculation or we think this. If you are saying something that you're not 100%, but you feel very comfortable, say, we believe at this point, it looks like, or some qualifying statement like that. It is important that you keep those lines of communication open. Once you have an event, if it's something that's at a scene, some sort of a disaster, you set up an area for the media to work from that suits their needs, which has, gives them opportunity to see what's going on without being in the way or being in a crime scene. But also you have in an area that you need to come back and keep making contact with them, let them know you haven't just forgotten them over here, that this is where they're going to get their information, and they'll stay there because they need the information and they need it quickly. So it's very important that part of your scene management, plans include how to basically corral the media, put them in a place that's comfortable for them, accessible for you. And there are some things with television, and you mentioned satellites. Satellite trucks, live trucks, they all come with a little bit of baggage attached to them. And the baggage being that for a live truck, you have to be in a place where they can run this long mast up into the air and be able to have a line of sight to a receive tower somewhere. So it doesn't work to have them down in the bottom of a gully. They need to be up high on a hill if there's some terrain available for that. They also don't want to be next to buildings or trees. Even the satellite truck sometimes can't get through in certain situations like that. And it's extremely important for safety for everybody there that you be the backup to the TV stations who do know better. Make sure that you're not setting up their live trucks to be underneath any kind of high power lines or any kind of power lines that they would run their mast up into. That just becomes then an opportunity for somebody to be electrocuted. And that has happened. And it's not the police responsibility generally, but everybody's under deadline pressure and are running around doing 3 or 4 things at once, and accidents do happen. And one thing the police can do is make sure when they're setting up the area for the media, it's not under power lines.
Again, the key to managing the media in an ongoing crisis, especially one that is being covered live, is to control it as much as possible. That means keeping the media in one place, giving them regular updates, couching those updates in calm, reassuring language. Here's what we know. Here's what we're doing about it. These are the assets we have in place. If you don't know the answer to a question, say so, and say you'll try to get the answer. If you can't answer a question, say that as well. I'm sorry, I can't talk about that right now. In a breaking news story, it's important to let the public know, through the media, that even though the situation may be frightening right now, we are working right now to bring the bad guys in and to keep you and the public safe.
First of all, make sure that anybody that's going to participate with you in that press conference knows what they're going to be saying and has a command of that subject, of that interview, of that incident, of that crime scene. If that's your sheriff, your chief of police, or your captain or your lieutenant, make sure they're fully briefed and can handle it. That's your first order of business. But simultaneously, you've got to set up a area or place that'll be conducive to your press conference. Think about noise, think about lighting, think about the surrounding area. You also want to project professionalism. You want a podium if possible, with your department seal on that if possible. United States and California flags are the department flag. You want to set a backdrop that conveys through the viewer's eyes professionalism and a sense of confidence.
We're able to obtain enough evidence to obtain the $10 million warrant for Mr. Reuben Bill.
If you've got time, I like to use floor markers to tell people where they're going to stand. Cops are famous for having press conferences with the chief or the sheriff standing out in front and a bunch of cops standing behind them. When you go into a press conference, you need to tell people where they're going to be standing. Going the extra mile is putting the tape on the floor with their name on it. And you tell them when they're going into the press conference, you're going to stand on the floor, you're going to stand behind the sheriff or the chief of police, and there's tape with your name on it. Put your toes on the line. If you've got time, check what that shot looks like through a camera lens to make sure that everybody you want in the shot is getting in there. If you've got toys and you have additional tools that you can use in a press conference, there's nothing wrong with using plasma screen TVs. It even projects it out forward. If you've got suspect photos, prepare those photos on a CD or a disc format that you can distribute at the press conference and say, here, it's on a JPEG format that you can utilize. Moving through the press conference, make sure that the speakers know what the batting order is beforehand. If you have to, stand off to the side. What I always do is I say, all right, our first speaker is the sheriff, followed by the district attorney, the county supervisor, and the chief probation officer. That's a speaking order. Once each has concluded their comments, I'll introduce the next one to come up. That gives the folks in the audience who are recording who's doing the talking twice to record the person's name. At the end of the press conference, when statements are finished, you're very well served if A, you can get the principal speaker, the sheriff or the chief of police or your captain, lieutenant, to ask for Q&A. If they're not comfortable doing Q&A, step forward and say, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking your questions now. Once you hear the question, make sure you restate the question. Not everybody's going to hear it, and one of the most annoying things you'll see on TV is somebody speaking and you don't know what the question is that they're trying to answer. So repeat the question asked, restate it, then answer the question. Those things are very helpful. When you're leaving the press conference, make sure that you have interviews set up for your principal speakers. Everyone is most likely want to get a one-on-one interview. I think one of the things that you can do is set up a separate room. Tell everybody, all right, we're going to go in order, A through Z. Come through here, you got 3 minutes to speak with the sheriff or the chief. Set up that room with as much professional as you can. If you can't or don't have staffing to help you do this, ask one of those folks to help you set it up. Trade out the fact that you'll give them the first interview if they'll help you with the lighting and give you some tips on setting up that location. Make sure you have 2 chairs in the room, one for the sheriff or the chief and one for the person interviewing you. Get the lighting, the sound, and everything down that you possibly can and move those people in and out.
I'm Vivian Ecclefield. Thanks for watching.